So what if the ultimate guide to, surviving toxic corporate meetings or navigating complex relationships wasn't actually written for adults at all?
It sounds kind of crazy when you put it like that.
Right. Like, what if instead of a $500 leadership seminar or some, I don't know, dense psychology textbook, the most profound framework for modern life was written for 6-year-olds?
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you strip away all the corporate jargon that we adults just love to hide behind,
Oh, we love our jargon.
we really do. But the foundational mechanics of how we interact with the world, they're surprisingly universal. And, often they're articulated best when they have to be explained to someone experiencing them for the very first time.
Which brings us to today's topic. So welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we're opening up a guide titled Life Skills for Grade 1, a parent and child guide to school, friends, nature, and everyday discovery.
It's quite a title.
It is. And look, before you tune out thinking, I mastered first grade decades ago, let me just stop you right there.
Yeah, please stick with us.
Because the mission of this deep dive isn't to look at a cute children's book. We are here to extract the foundational life skills embedded in this text. Because if you treat this material as, like, high-level philosophy disguised as a kid's book, it reveals this really startling truth.
Which is that most of us are walking around with a massive deficit in these exact foundational concepts.
Exactly. We build these incredibly complex adult lives, right?
Yeah.
Careers, mortgages, huge social networks.
But we're often doing it on top of a completely crumbling foundation of just like basic social and emotional mechanics.
Yes.
And the beauty of this guide is that it just strips the human experience right down to its studs. I mean, it doesn't start with reading words or doing math at a little desk.
No, not at all.
It argues that true learning or, just watching a bug under a leaf.
And to process all that, the book introduces this brilliantly simple cognitive framework. It's 3 steps: find, notice, and try.
Find, notice, try. It becomes the lens through which this entire guide operates.
So let's unpack that framework, because it's huge. The first step is find, which, sounds obvious, right? Just look around.
Right, but the text specifically frames it as looking with curious eyes. So it's this active, intentional process of scanning your environment.
Not just physically, but socially, too.
Exactly. Like finding a new flower near a gate or finding that a friend across the room is suddenly, very quiet.
Yeah, it's basically turning off your brain's autopilot.
That's a great way to put it. Stepping out of your own internal monologue to acknowledge that external reality actually exists. But okay, real magic happens in the transition to the second step. Notice.
And the guide makes a massive distinction here,
Yeah.
right? Because finding is just seeing that something is there.
Right.
But noticing is the analytical step. It means you actually pause and ask, what is happening here?
Right.
And why does it matter?
Yeah, let me give you an example of the difference between those two because it's important.
Yeah, go for it.
Think about a houseplant. You might find that the plant's leaves are drooping.
Okay.
That's just a mere observation of its state. But to notice means you look closer at the context. Like you touch the soil and realize it's totally dry.
Oh, or you observe it sitting right next to a blasting hot radiator.
Exactly. Noticing is the act of connecting that initial observation to a cause.
Which naturally leads right into the third step, try, which is where you turn that understanding into action.
Right.
You try giving the plant water, or you try moving it away from the radiator. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, the book emphasizes something critical here. Trying almost guarantees mistakes.
Yes. And it says that's not just acceptable, it's actually required.
Required.
Right.
Because the goal isn't flawless execution on the first attempt.
No, if a child waters the plant way too much, or, I don't know, speaks too loudly to a friend who wants to be quiet, the whole framework doesn't just collapse.
Right, the mistake just feeds right back into the very first step.
Exactly. You find the new result, you notice what went wrong, and you try again. It's a feedback loop.
It's the literal engine of human growth.
Yeah.
And honestly, what's fascinating to me is how profoundly we adults fail at this.
Oh, completely.
Because we pride ourselves on efficiency, right? But in the name of efficiency, we entirely amputate the notice step from our daily lives.
We really do.
Just think about, like, your last argument with a partner or a coworker. Did you actually notice the fatigue in their voice? Did you notice the context of whatever stressful day they just had?
Probably not. You probably just found a problem.
Right, they said something irritating.
And you immediately tried to fix it by just winning the argument.
Yes, We use adulthood and our so-called experience as an excuse to just skip the observation phase entirely.
Yeah.
We turn into these problem-solving machines operating with zero context.
Which is exactly why the solutions we try so often fail. I mean, we're treating symptoms without diagnosing the underlying cause.
It's wild.
By forcing a 6-year-old to pause and ask why, this guide is actually teaching the neurological habit of impulse control. It's creating a gap between stimulus and response.
Okay, so once we have this framework down, find, notice, try, the guide immediately tests it in the most volatile environment possible.
Other human beings.
Other human beings, yes. The whole section on friends in school is essentially this crash course in navigating society.
Yeah.
And it starts with greetings.
Yeah.
It literally calls words like good morning and thank you. Small words with big power.
I love that phrasing because, we tend to dismiss greetings. We treat them as mere societal friction.
Just polite throat clearing where the real business begins.
Exactly. The text frames greetings as tools of psychological safety. Like saying good morning isn't actually about the morning at all.
Right.
It's a verbal cue. It tells the other person's mammalian brain, I see you, you are recognized, and you belong here. It opens a door.
And right next to that is listening. The guide frames listening not as just, the passive state of not talking. It's an active choice.
An active choice that communicates your words matter.
Which, again, perfectly translates to adulthood.
Yeah.
Think about corporate meetings. How many of those are just rooms full of people passively waiting for their turn to speak?
A painful amount, honestly.
Instead of actually actively listening to build on an idea.
Yeah. But the guide is also incredibly pragmatic here. It doesn't pretend that if you just say good morning and listen, you'll magically never have conflict.
Well, no, of course not.
It treats arguments as a totally natural byproduct of humans existing in the same space. But the breakthrough is how it teaches conflict resolution.
Right. It gives this really specific script. Step back and use words to share feelings without blaming.
The classic shift from you are bad to I felt sad when that happened.
And that shift is monumental because it removes the attack, which, lowers the other person's defensive walls immediately.
Yeah, and it forces the child to look inward, to identify their own emotional state. It also notes that a real apology takes immense courage.
Because it requires cognitive empathy.
Exactly. You have to step outside your own perspective and say, my actions caused you pain, and different doesn't mean wrong.
Okay, I do have to push back on this a little bit, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I'm reading this textbook, and I'm picturing, like, a chaotic first-grade playground.
Chaos. Pure chaos.
Right. Is it really realistic to expect a 6-year-old whose toy has just been violently snatched away to take a deep breath, suppress their rage, and perfectly articulate, I feel frustrated by your actions?
Yeah, no.
Because that level of emotional regulation is rare in 50-year-olds.
It is, and that is a very fair critique, but it's one the authors actually anticipate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guide explicitly acknowledges that children's feelings are enormous. Like anger flares up in a millisecond, tears just fall without any warning.
Okay, so it knows they aren't robots.
Right. The text isn't demanding immediate stoic perfection. What it is doing is laying down the neural pathways.
So it's about the practice, not the immediate results.
Precisely. When a child is angry, their amygdala, right, the brain's threat center, is completely hijacked.
They're in fight or flight.
Exactly. So by practicing simple phrases, even just please stop or I need help, they are slowly building a bridge between that emotional center and their prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and language.
Got it. So it's teaching self-control as a muscle that you slowly strengthen over time, not just some switch you can flip on.
Right. And that concept completely flips the script on how we view rules, too.
Oh, the rules section was fascinating.
It really was. The guide approaches rules at school or home not as barriers to freedom, but as tools for collective safety.
Right. It teaches kids that we don't walk in the hallway because running is some sort of moral failing.
No, we walk because if you run, you might bump into someone and actually hurt them.
Which changes a rule from an arbitrary adult command I have to obey to a social contract I actively participate in to protect my friends.
And that distinction is everything. Because when you understand the why behind a boundary, obedience turns into citizenship. You aren't just complying out of fear of punishment anymore. You're cooperating out of mutual respect.
That's so powerful. So, okay, we've talked about the immediate, noisy feedback loops of human interaction. Like, you yell at a friend, they cry. The feedback is instant.
Right.
But what happens when the subject you're interacting with can't talk back? That forces an entirely different, much deeper level of that noticing step, which is exactly where the guide goes next, exploring a child's interaction with nature.
Yes, and it calls observing nature a quiet kind of friendship.
I love that. Quiet kind of friendship.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It describes looking without grabbing or disturbing. Because when a child approaches a plant or an insect, they can't rely on the subject to articulate its needs.
Right, a drooping plant isn't going to scream, "I am thirsty!"
Exactly. The child has to rely entirely on their own powers of observation to read those nonverbal cues from the physical world.
And the guide extracts some really heavy lessons from plants. I mean,
Yeah.
it mentions patience, responsibility, observation, gentleness, connection.
It's a lot.
It is. But the one that really stopped me in my tracks was this concept of active waiting.
Oh, yes. Active
It
waiting.
describes planting a seed. You put it in the soil, you water it, and then nothing happens.
Nothing for days.
For days. And to a child, the soil looks exactly the same. It just feels like empty, boring time. But the text explains that under the soil, massive changes are happening.
Right. A tiny root is reaching down.
Yeah.
Energy is being expended.
And this is where that tri-step gets highly nuanced. Because the child's job is not to dig up the seed to check on its progress.
No, definitely not.
And it's certainly not to pull on the tiny sprout once it appears to make it grow faster.
Yeah.
Their job is just to ensure the conditions are right. The soil, the water, the sunlight. And then just step back and let biology do its work.
It reminds me of the duck metaphor.
Oh, active waiting is exactly like a duck gliding on a pond.
Yeah.
Above the surface, it looks perfectly still, almost stagnant. But underneath the water, those little webbed feet are paddling furiously.
That seed is paddling furiously in the dark.
It really is.
And neurologically speaking, teaching a child active waiting might be the most vital intervention in the modern age.
Because of technology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We live in a world engineered for instant dopamine hits. You click a button, a video plays, you send a text, you get a reply instantly. We are completely conditioned for immediate gratification.
And a plant fundamentally rejects that timeline.
It does. It forces the human brain to align with the slow, steady rhythm of the natural world. It teaches that not all work produces immediate, visible results.
Which, again, is a lesson every adult needs to hear, especially when you're grinding away at a long-term project or, trying to rebuild a relationship.
Or waiting for a major career pivot to pay off.
Yes. You cannot pull the plant to make it grow faster. You can't force the breakthrough. You just do the daily work of providing the right conditions, and you actively wait. Growth has its own unalterable timing.
And that steady care builds a profound sense of responsibility. The text makes a point to emphasize that life, whether it's a flower or a little beetle, it can't simply be replaced like a plastic toy.
Or rebooted like a video game.
Right. It demands stewardship. It teaches that kindness isn't just a warm feeling you have inside. Kindness is an action you continually perform.
Okay, so as this child is practicing their active waiting and their quiet observation, their world naturally starts expanding. They're leaving the house, walking to school, exploring the neighborhood.
And as boundaries expand, so does the introduction of risk.
Right, and the guide tackles the concept of danger. But it doesn't do it through the lens of fear. It frames safety as the power to protect yourself.
Which is a monumental paradigm shift in how we think about vulnerability. Well, traditionally, we teach safety as a list of restrictions, like don't talk to strangers or don't go over there.
It's an inherently passive framing.
Exactly. It makes the child a potential victim of the world. But by renaming it the power to protect yourself, the authors are framing safety as a personal capability. It's armor, not a cage.
And it breaks this power down into very specific actions, like the power of stopping before you cross a blind intersection. But even more importantly, the power of speaking and the power of moving away.
Those two are huge.
Yeah.
They are the absolute bedrock of personal boundaries.
Yeah, the guide teaches children that they have the explicit right to say, "Stop, please," or "I do not like that rough game."
And to physically remove themselves from a situation that feels unsafe.
Right, whether it's a physical danger or just an uncomfortable secret. Teaching a child that their bodily autonomy and their internal warning systems are valid, that equips them to navigate peer pressure and toxic environments for the rest of their lives.
It even applies this empowerment to massive, totally uncontrollable events like earthquakes or fires.
Oh, the disaster drills section.
Yeah. The book discusses disaster drills, and it explicitly states that these drills aren't meant to scare you. They are meant to create wisdom that turns panic into calm, rehearsed action.
Because fear thrives in the unknown.
Exactly. By practicing the response, you give the brain a script to follow when the amygdala inevitably floods the system with panic. You're replacing helplessness with agency.
And having that sense of agency radically shifts how the child views their entire neighborhood.
It does.
Because the guide spends time encouraging kids to apply those noticing skills to the people working around them.
The crossing guards in the rain.
Right. The people restocking shelves at the local shop, or the sanitation workers sweeping the streets. It is actively trying to shift the child's mindset.
From I am a consumer who uses this neighborhood to I am a citizen in a neighborhood that many people work hard to create.
And the psychology of that shift is so deeply tied to gratitude and stewardship.
Oh, absolutely. When you view a clean park simply as something you're entitled to, you might just leave your trash behind.
Right, someone else will clean it up.
But when you actively notice the human effort required to maintain that space, you realize that shared spaces require shared care. You become genuinely invested in your community.
Which really brings us to the combination of all these micro skills. Observation, emotional regulation, patience, boundary setting, community awareness.
It's a massive toolkit.
It is. And how does a human actually internalize all of this? Well, the book closes with a short, fictional story that synthesizes a full year of this growth.
Yes, the girl who gathered the seasons.
I have to admit, I did not expect a grade 1 textbook to hit me right in the feelings, but this story.
Wow. It's a beautifully crafted narrative summary. So we follow this first grade girl named Haruna, and early in the year she finds this small, smooth white box near a flower bed.
And the box is totally empty.
It's empty, but a quiet voice tells her to gather the seasons by using the core mantra.
Find, notice, try.
Exactly, and we watch her apply the framework across the whole year. So in spring, she finds a classmate named Mio standing all alone.
She notices that Mio looks lonely.
Right, and she tries to bridge that gap by asking her to play, and when she does, this yellow light representing spring just appears in her box.
And then in summer, she gets into a heated jump rope argument with that exact same friend, Mio.
But Haruna uses her tools. She notices Mio is sad, she regulates her own anger, and she tries to apologize. And a blue light of summer appears.
Then autumn comes. She's walking to school, and she notices the crossing guard helping the community.
Which inspires her to try helping out at home by setting the dinner table, and she gets an orange light.
Finally, in winter, she notices a younger student drop a mitten in the freezing cold. She tries to help by running after them to return it. A white light.
So she spends the entire year gathering these colored lights that represent her actions, but the brilliance of the story is the climax.
Oh, the ending is so good.
At the end of the school year, Haruna realizes that she has fundamentally changed. She has learned how to find the small changes in her friends, in her plants, and in her neighborhood.
And when she goes back to the box, the lights rise up, they merge into this multicolored light of growing, and they just rest inside her heart.
Leaving the box completely empty.
Wait, so she didn't actually collect the seasons at all?
No.
The lights weren't like magic objects she was hoarding. The box was just a metaphor for her internalizing those find, notice, try moments. She became the box.
Exactly. The story is illustrating that we don't just passively move through time. We don't just survive spring, summer, fall, and winter.
By actively finding, noticing, and trying, we metabolize our experiences.
Beautifully said. We weave them into our character. We grow our cognitive empathy, our resilience, our connection to the world around us.
And the empty box at the end is such a powerful reminder that the tools of observation and action are always there, just waiting to be picked up again for the next cycle of learning.
It's just a phenomenal piece of writing.
It really is. So bringing this all back to you, the listener, let's look at the reality of what we've unpacked today, looking carefully with curious eyes to understand the why before you act.
Listening kindly to validate someone else's existence.
Trying things safely and actually allowing yourself to make mistakes. Setting boundaries to protect your peace.
And acknowledging the invisible labor of the people who make your life easier.
None of these are childish concepts.
Not at all. They are the absolute pinnacle of what it means to be a grounded, highly functional, empathetic adult.
The real tragedy is that we often view these skills as something we graduate from, rather than a daily practice we have to maintain.
We think we outgrow them.
Right. But time moves, nature changes, and the people around us evolve. Whether you are navigating a high-stakes corporate merger or trying to break a cycle of arguments with your spouse, or just figuring out how to feel less isolated in your own city.
Framework doesn't change.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Step off autopilot.
Yeah.
Find the reality of the situation. Notice the context and the underlying causes, and try to take constructive action. Find, notice, try.
It really is that simple and honestly that difficult.
It's the work of a lifetime. To wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, incredibly evocative thought from the text to mull over.
It's a good one.
When the guide discusses the flow of the seasons, it notes that in the dead of winter, a tree without leaves may look lonely. It looks bare. If you just glance at it, it might even look completely dead.
But it isn't.
No. Underneath the bark, in the freezing cold, it is secretly, quietly preparing for spring. It is doing the hidden, unglamorous work of survival and gathering energy.
It's such a profound reframe of what stillness actually means.
So take a look at your own life right now. What is a winter period for you? Where in your life is there a quietness, a plateau, or a perceived lack of visible success? What if that stillness isn't failure? What if it is actually just you doing the necessary hidden preparation for your next big season of growth?
Something to think about.
Keep noticing. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.